Hello there, fortune seekers. There is so much that goes into making a game. In fact, the process is so involved that we've already talked for 10 hours about just a fraction of what it takes. So today we're going to take an overview of where we are in that process. We will discuss our goals as to where we are in the journey at 3 different phases. First, when we first started making the game. Second, about midway through the journey. And third, where we are today. And we're going to dig into how we feel about it, whether we've overachieved in our initial goals or if we're still falling behind or feel like we haven't quite hit where we wanted to get to. We're going to discuss all that and more today on this episode of the Moth Studios Super Secret Podcast. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Game Maker, and Pizza Slayer, Joel Watts, joined as always by
Danny, who's not really in on the joke.
And last week, Danny and I, on episode 10, we discussed where we see our game, X Seekers of Fortune, fitting into the marketplace. If you want to hear more about that or any of the other topics we've discussed, please take a step back in your podcast feed and just go listen through the archives. Today in episode 11, we're going to discuss where we have exceeded our expectations when we started our journey and where we still feel like we're lagging behind or what still needs to be developed further. If this is the first time you're hearing about the game called X Seekers of Fortune, please take a moment to check us out on all the social medias. If you're a TikTok user, we're at Moth Studios. If you're on Instagram, we're at X_Seekers_of_Fortune. And then Facebook is just X Seekers of Fortune. Pretty easy there. But, the biggest achievement that we've gotten to this point, in all of the goals, I did not expect this one to come to fruition. If you were just to Google X Seekers of Fortune, we are like the top 3 results. They're all relevant to us, including our website, megamothstudios.com, being pretty much the first link you'll see. So please just go ahead and Google us and you'll find more than what you need to know.
I noticed that you just kind of skipped over the part in your show notes where you were going to tell people to go back and listen to how you compared yourself to Genghis Khan as the most infamous person in history that you identify with.
I didn't think it was Genghis Khan. If you listen back to the last week's episode, it was Winston Churchill.
I'm pretty sure we're retconning that to Genghis Khan.
Okay. And yeah, Danny had had a little chance at modifying the show notes right before we started, so there might be a couple things in here that will surprise me and you. All right, Danny. So before we get into our main topic today, which is going to be a meaty one, and in a way it's its own question of the week, why don't we just do a quick question of the week, just so the audience who might not know us can get to know us. And this one just, I just think every now and then you kind of have to give back. And I just wanted to ask, who has grabbed your attention on social media this week, Danny?
Well, okay. This is a good question. I think I can answer it with a fairly normal answer.
Okay.
So my social media pick of this week, unsurprisingly, comes from TikTok because that is where I spend most of my time on social media these days. And I have found a creator in the TTRPG space out of Oklahoma City named Jack Panic that I highly recommend following if you are at all interested in TTRPGs or just kind of getting started doing something in the game space as a business. So Jack is a extremely creative and generous with his knowledge, professional dungeon master. He operates in Oklahoma City. He does private sessions. I think if I was in Oklahoma City and I was remotely interested in joining a campaign that was super cool, I would absolutely reach out to Jack. He shares some of the content for the campaigns that he's working with online, some previews for just kind of how he sets the scene, and kind of shares some of the art and illustrations and maps and NPC portraits and things that he uses. And I've never wanted to sit down at a table for 4 hours and disappear into someone else's imaginary world more than watching Jack's TikTok. So my pick of the week is Jack Panic. highly recommend you give him a follow on TikTok and inundate yourself with some super sweet TTRPG content.
Oh, that sounds excellent. Jack Panic. I will have to check him out. I would love to learn more about that because I think you showed me one of his videos and he was talking about being a professional dungeon master. And I just think that that's a wonderful time we're living in is because dungeon mastering, I've listened to my fair share of D&D podcasts and campaigns, and to do it right, it really is a full-time commitment. So I'm just really happy that, people see the value of hiring a skilled and qualified DM because it is definitely not for the faint of heart, and it's not for everybody. So if somebody has that skill set and the talent for it, they should probably be getting compensated, especially if they're offering their services, around your schedule.
Yeah, and for what is probably fairly comparable in price to going to a movie, like I think that that's a much better custom experience that's going to be super memorable and way more fun than you're going to have at the movie theater. So again, I don't know if I'm misrepresenting Jack's prices here, but based on something I saw in a video, I think that it's not unfair to compare it to what you might spend at a movie theater.
Okay. Well, Danny, for my answer, I'm going to give you a little choose your own poison moment. Would you rather me talk to you about a podcast or about a YouTuber?
See none of the above.
Okay, well then,
What were my options? Podcast or YouTuber?
yeah, there's a podcast I could tell you about or a YouTuber I could tell you about.
Is this like a false choice, and no matter what I answer, you're going to just start talking about yourself?
I mean, considering I consumed the media, I assume that I will end up talking a little bit about myself.
But you're not like the YouTuber or podcaster in question here?
No.
All right, talk to me about the YouTuber.
Okay, well, recently, I guess it's like I've taken a long road to get to like some of the YouTube classic people, or I shouldn't say classic. They're probably like the new era, the new school YouTubers that are coming about. Like Jarvis Johnson is a great example. Curtis, I forget his last name, but the one that's really caught my attention is Chad, and she's I don't know, she's just a commentary YouTuber. I'm not even sure what the genre is. They're like like somewhere between a comedy stand-up set but they're sitting down and just recording themselves, and video essays, because they're usually kind of being critical about things that are happening on social media, usually around, commentators of certain political varieties. And I don't know, she's just really hilarious. She has quite a dry sense of humor and just a really good presentation of her material. And it seems to, like I said, stick with the theme of, sort of taking it to certain kinds of commentators. So I don't know. I just think if you haven't explored the infotainment of YouTube, I would highly recommend maybe giving Chad a try. That's her handle. So yeah, I think she's just hilarious.
Nice. I thought you were going to say Mr. Beast.
Hey, if you haven't heard about Mr. Beast, get with the program here, because he's doing these things. Like, he took 100 darn people and put them in cages.
I will say that I just started noticing Mr. Beast increasing his activity on LinkedIn, and it's very interesting to start seeing a bunch of really popular Mr. Beast posts on LinkedIn.
That is strange. I mean, he is a very
They're hiring.
That is true. Oh, yeah. I mean, he has to hire people for the massive productions he puts on. I mean, I'm not that into that scale of YouTuber, but I have to give him credit for like basically doing things that network TV didn't even do, at those scales. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I can't wait to reproduce a lot of his stunts with you doing the stunts without the same safety precautions.
Oh, no, I'm sure you're going to talk me into it. I have a feeling it's just like I'm just going to get caught with my pants down, almost literally, and just be like, why is there a camera here right now? And then I open a door and I don't know. I've somehow.
Why am I controlling the submarine with the game controller?
Hard mode. All right. Well, I don't think Mr. Beast needs any more plugging. I prefer, like I said, like the medium big YouTubers. I'll tell you more about some of my other YouTube faves on other episodes. But right now, why don't we go ahead and get into today's topic? So, Danny, a few weeks ago, you went on TikTok to solicit questions for the show, and we got one question back that I thought we thought,
I think this was a we situation.
yeah, because you got one question back that we thought was so good, we just wanted to make an entire episode around it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We got one from a gentleman named Team Rip. I think it's Team Rip.
So I read it as Team RIP, rest in peace.
Well, it's difficult to say with Magic, right? Like the first thought is it ripping booster packs? That would make sense. But I mean, it could be that he just has a pet card in rest in peace. So, he wouldn't be the first person to have a unhealthy
Yeah.
obsession with that card. But I have a feeling it's the
Or he had a very
former.
tragic team kill situation. The rest of his team is rest in peace because he accidentally fragged him.
Or maybe it's like a tragic arrogance situation, like with Gideon and all his like dead Greeks.
All right.
I feel like that's going to seem real strange out of context for those who do not pay much attention to Magic.
I recognize the name Gideon, but that was basically as far as I went with that one.
Well, Gideon's been dead a while. No spoilers.
I know it's always the best. They always take the best ones away from us, don't they? And leave us with.
Well, they got rid of Venser and Dak Faden, so I would agree with that.
I mean,
And then like Elspeth, but then they brought Elspeth back, but under the precondition that they would make her worse.
isn't always the case. I mean, they stuck with Urza being dead for so long too. I mean, Urza wasn't. I mean, I feel like he was such a great character, and they were just like, nope, he's dead, and he's going to always be dead.
I wish I could tell you confidently that I know if Urza is alive or dead, but who knows what they've done here in the last few months. That's like 17,000 years in Magic product time.
Yeah, in this day and age. Well, why don't we?
Anyway.
What did Team Rip have to ask us?
So Team Rip writes, when you look back at when you first started designing your game, which goals have you hit? Which have you exceeded? Would you say you under or overestimated them? So I added a couple extra words in there just to make it a little bit easier on the people listening. So that was the question.
Well, there's a lot of meat on that bone, so why don't we get down to nibbling on it? Team Rip asked about our goals. I'll start by laying out some of our major goals, and then we can chew on it together.
Sounds like something that you would say very naturally and not have had written for you by someone who likes hearing you say bizarre things.
Well, I didn't get a chance to rehearse my lines. I could take it again.
I think we've had enough nibbling. Let's go ahead and jump on into it. What do you want to do? You want to start off by laying out the goals or explaining how we're going to do this?
All right, Danny. So I think just for the sake of organization, we should probably break the game down into 3 different eras of goals, because as this project has grown in scale, it's definitely changed. Our what we want it to be has changed, and what our perspective as to why we get up to do this has changed as well. And I think the first era would be the beginning, and I could say overall what I was like most latched onto was just having a creative project to work on with one of my best friends was very important to me. But then once we moved into like the midway zone, when the game was really coming together, it really turned into, wanting to turn this game into a work of art, which meant it being fun, sticky, deep, and worthy of competitive play. And that became like our driving motivator. And then once we hit all of those, and we felt like we had the game in our hands the way we wanted it, with only minor adjustments and tune-ups to make, then it became, we got to scale this game to a broad audience and engage players with, at the very least, a regional organized play structure. And I would just say, in general, growing our business and our community.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good way of looking at the evolution or progression of our goals. It started pretty small. It was a very like down to earth goal that was really more about connection. Coming out of the pandemic, I mean, it's just grown and grown and grown. Feels like a snowball going down a hill.
Yeah. Well, I completely agree. I mean, I'm sitting in front of a microphone talking to you on a podcast, and that wasn't even one of our goals on the onset. I think it was like around the midway point we started talking about, oh, to really grow our community, we're going to need to have things like a podcast and have a Discord server, possibly doing live streams in the future, which we're still looking into, and kind of like under the mentorship of Laird in order to make happen. But
Yeah, it was actually one of my goals to not have a podcast, and I failed that abysmally.
I drug you across the lines because I was just on the lookout for what can I have a podcast about that I'm an expert of, and then I figured, oh wait, I created a game. I'm an expert of the game. I'm going to.
What did you drug me with?
I said dragged, not drugged. But if I were to choose a drug, I mean, I'm a pretty reasonable man. Probably just some X-Lax. I think that would put you into into a very
Not the right
controlling.
drug for a podcast. The goal is for me to sit in front of the microphone.
You can always bring the microphone with you.
No, I don't think so. I think we're going to pass on that option.
Okay. Well,
You're really showing your inner Genghis Khan.
well, so let's go back to the beginning then. Before the podcast, well before the podcast, and yeah, like I'm sure you have your own perspective on this, but when you first brought the game to me, I was out. It was like October of last year. I was a few months out of having a major health crisis that I was still like dealing with. Basically, I had an emergency, and they fixed the emergency part of it. It had to do with my intestines and a infection that was going on in there. I don't want to get too into the weeds, but basically they fixed the infection. But then was looking forward to having a surgery shortly after that, in early of this past year, like in January. So I think I was like just in a bit of a mental fog of like, where is my life going? Because I don't know, like I was closer to death than I think I could have appreciated, before having been there. So once I was all fixed up, I kind of found myself, like I said, in a funk. And that's when, a few months into that is when you came to me with this idea of creating a game, and you had thought up a card game that you thought would be fun and a little more casual for people than Magic the Gathering. So my goal at that time, like I said, was just to get kind of back in the creative groove and to work on something with you, somebody who had been a great creative partner in the past. What were your goals?
Yeah, I think it's interesting you talk about being in a funk, at that point, I mean, even now, but at that point, especially, I was in the middle of, going through a divorce and trying to kind of recalibrate my life. And I had spent the last, 8 years really invested in my family, which of course I still am. But when the kids are younger, it's very difficult to have the bandwidth to do other things. And I finally started to feel like there was like a little bit of room to start engaging with creative projects again. And, you and I have always worked extremely well together, especially for like relatively large scope projects. And so, I was just kind of like, this would be a really good way to re-engage. So, I mean, it is funny because we've talked a little bit about this on the show before, but it's mostly been from the perspective of, trying to make a game, and our goals about trying to make a game. But I mean, I think really at its inception, it was just as much about, reconnecting a friendship and reinvigorating a spark of creativity, and just kind of getting back on the horse of being a creator again of something, and this was sort of a new genre for us to be working in. But ultimately, I would say that if we're looking back at this through the lens of, the initial goal just being, do something creative with your friend, I mean, we killed it. We're still doing it.
Yeah. No, it's blossomed. I mean, it went from something that we would talk about, an hour to a day, when we had a chance, to ballooning into something that we probably spend at least 4 hours a day talking
Yeah.
on the phone, depending on the day, of course. Some days you're busier with your day job, and some days I have a little bit more going on. But, a good day where we're both firing on all cylinders, we're easily putting in, 2 to 4 hours just on the phone, or, doing other parts of the project. So, yeah, we definitely did that. Now,
I think that's probably the thing I underestimated the most, was just how much and how quickly the game would consume our lives. You know, it. You've got all kinds of projects you work on over your life that don't really take up a ton of bandwidth. But very quickly this thing became, the one of the primary organizing factors in our life, I would say. Like, a lot of my life right now, outside of my family, is really dictated by the game. My week is structured around my responsibilities to the game. I'm thinking about my year in terms of where we're trying to get in terms of the game. So the amount of time and how quickly it's gotten to this point that this time was required was something that I think I grossly underestimated.
I can completely agree with you on that. I would even say the key word I heard in there was structure, where I almost feel like I need to do a little bit of restructuring of my own life, to make sure that I don't, turn into some sort of workaholic. Not to say that I mean, I could definitely probably put more efficient work into the game, but I definitely have had a few days where I wake up, have my coffee, and sit down to start working on the game, thinking, oh, I'll just put in a couple hours into the game here on a day off, and then I'm going to go and do some things, only to look down and I started working on the game 10, maybe 11, after, waking up. I sleep in a little because I tend to work a little later, and I'll look down and then it'll be 5, 6 o'clock at night, and all those errands that I thought I should run before working on the game have passed me by, passed by. So, yeah, I think I agree. It's like, I feel like the people who have made other games like Magic the Gathering would often say something to the effect of, like, don't worry about, like, basically the game just consumes ideas. It just tears through your ideas. You're never going to have enough for it. It's just constantly going to want more and more. And it's kind of true about starting a business, starting a game, and time. And any time that you give it will not be enough. So you might as well be very intentional about the time that you hand over.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, we talked about this, I think, a little bit last episode, but, at a certain point, you have to make an intentional effort to carve out time for yourself to just be human and do the things that refill your cup. On the side of overestimation, to the extent that I overestimated anything at the beginning, I would say I overestimated the amount of time that it would take for the game to be at the point that it is, or maybe to the point that we were ready to share it with the world. Like, I remember right before Comic Palooza feeling like we're not ready to roll this out to the world. Like, this is something that, needs months and months more development, which I think was completely wrong-headed, in retrospect, because the game has only benefited from that exposure and all the connections and everything that transpired from Comic Palooza. I mean, it's not an overstatement to say that many of the major components of our subsequent success are directly attributable to connections and experiences that we had at Comic Palooza.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, not to give anything away, but we're going to have a few guests hopefully on the show here in the next few weeks, and those are going to be folks that we met at Comic Palooza or through somebody else that we met at Comic Palooza. We've had events based on our success at Comic Palooza. And we were connected with the people that were pursuing to be the printers of our game based on the information we got from Comic Palooza. That was probably the turning point of the game.
100%.
But I
100%.
also don't blame you. I mean, like, yeah, from the outside looking in, you kind of want to present people with perfection, and you just constantly want to toil away and whittle away. But you forget that when you start showing, especially something like a game, to other people, that's when it starts actually evolving, and you get to actually respond to people's how they interact with it. So I understand like why you would it was in your nature to think that the game needed more work, but I would push anybody out there. It's like the sooner that you can feel comfortable showing your game off to other people or other creative type of projects, the sooner you'll get reactions, and then you can react to those reactions. And that's usually going to cause you to get out of like certain headspaces you had about like, oh, this should be this way because it's just always been that way. And you start questioning, why do we do it this way? We've changed a few rules about the game and a few operations based on like, getting feedback and, just through play testing and showing it to strangers for the first time. You start to realize, oh, why do we do it this way? We only do it this way because we've played the game 30 times and we thought that would actually improve the game to make that change. I would say the example that comes most to mind is we used to, in our game, every turn you reveal an adventure, except at the time, the first player first turn. And I think we just decided to do it that way because that's how a game like Magic the Gathering would do it. You wouldn't be able to draw on your first turn. But what we hadn't realized in our game is that it's questionable to say that the person who's taking the first turn is getting a big advantage. And we just made that decision because it's how Magic the Gathering did it. And making decisions based on how Magic the Gathering did something has steered us in a good direction often, but it's not always 100% true that it's the right way of doing things. And once we started playing with real people and we realized that if you tell them that there's this thing that you do every turn, which is draw an adventure, except for on your first turn, it's just wasting a lot of time and breath to say that every single time you're teaching somebody new versus just saying, okay, the turn's order is you're going to draw an adventure, draw your leads, and take your turn. And that's just one example of what it took us showing the game to outsiders for us to like learn and change about the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that all really almost feeds into the second era goal. If you want to kind of maybe posit that one for us.
Well, yeah, because I mean, we've talked about this on the podcast before. I almost want to say mythical day that we actually showed our game off to two of our friends, our friend Patrick and my brother Nathan. I think from that point on, once we knew we had something, our goal switched into making a game that was fun, sticky, deep, and worth competitive play. So I guess my question to you, Danny, is have we hit all of those goals, and how did we do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think by and large we have. I mean, I think it's not done. I mean, and it's not perfect, obviously. It's never going to be perfect. I mean, we talk about this with writing and other creative projects a lot. It's not that you finish a work, it's that you abandon it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you reach that point of diminishing returns, or you reach a deadline that you don't have enough time to reach for those extra few points, and you say this is all that it can be, or this is all it's going to be, and then it's time to move on to the next thing. We're not quite there yet with X Seekers of Fortune, but I think that we're not far from a point of diminishing returns. We're still learning a lot about the game, but I think about a lot of what we're learning is going to be applied to the next sets and different ways of playing the game. For instance, we experimented with drafting this weekend. I was in Atlanta visiting my brother. We ended up playing probably 10 games, and we drafted the game for the first time. And it turns out that it is a very fun way to play the game. And I expect that it might become the primary way it's played, especially at kitchen tables. But overall, I feel like we've checked a lot of those boxes. but that was because we were very, very intentional about it. And, we kind of talked about, okay, hey, we need a fun factor. We need this to be sticky.
Mm-hmm.
We want there to be complexity and depth, and we want people to play it competitively. And we just kept turning the dials until we, started to see those features reflected in people's interaction with the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that this was like the era of us, like developing the game that was most rapid. And I guess because of that, it felt like the most rewarding, because it's an era where we were pursuing fun, we were pursuing exciting, we were pursuing like, let's make this thing better. We're still pursuing that, and obviously the playtesting you did with draft, and I'm so excited to try the draft mode that you and Lucas have sort of
It's
developed.
sweet.
Like, and I have my own ideas, like, because I feel like we could have like multiple formats for this game, so I can't wait to try some of those with you, and we're going to get those set up for trying out. But to rewind back to this midway point, we've shown the game off, we've received reaction, and we're starting to invite more people to try it. And this is like the era when we decided on our theme. This is the era where we started creating the heroic feats, which we didn't even call heroic feats at the time. It was just like I felt like almost every day we got on the phone and talked. This was when it was a really good era for me to be able to, because I could just talk. We could just talk and talk and talk and kind of get to the bottom of an idea on the phone. And today it's like now, because of my job, I can be on the phone, but I can't really do much else. I can't like, type out notes or like draft an email while I'm at my job. And I think that's starting to hinder because we are working on businessy kind of things and we're needing to reach out to people outside of our group. But when it was just like cooking the game and, just checking, like if the game is a meal, we were like, just stirring the pot and checking the oven and, prepping the materials are the all the food. It was a really great time for us to be able to get a lot of work done in that theoretical headspace, and then kind of bring all those ideas together and run a play test like every other day or so. And I don't know, I really enjoy building a business, but I think I'm really going to enjoy getting back to making either our next set, starting from scratch with a new Action X deck to build the game around, or building a new game from the ground up. That's a very exciting time. Once you get over that hurdle of, do we have something here? And once you have something, and then all it becomes is just suiting it up, making it better, and folding the steel of the game. Whew. But I would say, to go back to those goals that you talked about, I mean, this is when we made the game fun. And there's almost like a point where we realized, oh, we've made the game fun and sticky. Like it went from being a game that we both like enjoyed theoretically, and we thought there would be people out there who would want to play the game, to being a game that we both like. I remember one of the first games, the playtest, when we had introduced some new heroic feats into the game that changed the way it played. And I just remember thinking, oh, wow, this has now made it to where this game goes deep enough where I don't know what the right thing to do is in any given situation. And that's when it became really fun and really sticky.
It was interesting. When I was in Atlanta this weekend, we were talking about playing a game, and it was kind of late. And Lucas's girlfriend, Sam, asked me like, hey, because Lucas was like, hey, do you want to play a game? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And she's like, do you feel like you have to say that because it's your game? Like if someone asks you if you want to play your game, you feel obliged to play it. And, I said like, no, honestly, like we just worked really hard to make a game that we would almost always be up for playing, and I mean that. I mean, we played a ton that weekend. I would play more. I don't get more tired of it than playing any of my other games that I really enjoy playing. But I would say on the side of like underestimating, I would say that I underestimated how much playtesting was going to be necessary. It's not like I didn't think a lot of playtesting would be necessary. I think it was just that we didn't have a really good mindset for how we would approach playtesting. And the idea of trying to playtest a game as complex as X Seekers of Fortune with just 2 people is not feasible. Like if it was just Joel and I playing now, we would not be anywhere near where we are. Been very fortunate to have other people who have taken to the game very quickly, with really great minds for playing games that have helped accelerate our progress. But yeah, I mean the sheer amount of play testing for a game of this level of complexity is a little overwhelming.
Yeah, I would say that there was a time back when we had shown the game off to like Patrick and Nathan, but we really hadn't like incorporated anybody else into playing the game. And in that era, I was actually pretty. I would go as far as to say I was a little embarrassed, thinking that we would try to release this game before we had adequately play tested it with a lot of people. And at the time, I just couldn't imagine other people really playing the game. I don't know why, but it had just been you and I was like, what are we going to do? Print the game and then start showing other people? Now I feel a lot better that we've had quite a few people take a look at our game and give it put it through its paces. But, back then, yeah, it was definitely I would say, I mean, I was probably estimating the right amount of play testing, but I also had no idea how we were going to get there.
Yeah, no, I mean it's very difficult to imagine. On the other end of it, with the overestimation, which I think is probably a positive thing, is I guess I overestimated how resistant people would be to trying a brand new card game. I figured a lot of people would be like, I have my game, no thank you. But surprisingly, a lot of people from other TCGs, other types of games, have been really receptive to trying X Seekers of Fortune and to continuously playing it. So, I mean, that's something I think I would say I overestimated, was just how resistant people would be to trying the game.
Now, they're not perfect, but I have a feeling when I show up to the store, not with sleeved cards, but with actual printed out cards with card backs on them.
Ooh.
This is something that we probably should have brought up earlier in the episode, but we now have our official, or not official, we have our first prototypes that were actually produced by GameCrafter. And we have like 12 of these decks, so it's going to be much easier for us. I might as well show off an adventure as well. I think it's going to be much easier to show somebody this and ask if they want to try it out versus, what we had before. Anyway.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, I can't wait. I can't wait. We're going to be meeting up here in next week or the week after?
Next week.
Oh, next week.
Next week.
Really? We're going to be meeting up, and I can't wait to hand off half of these bad boys to you. But yeah, I think, especially if you go to the right places, you're going to get a lot of people interested in trying out your game. And board game players are some of the most interested, most curious, and nicest people to interact with, especially when you're presenting a full-fledged game to them. That has definitely been something I personally underestimated, just the generosity of that community. And I'm really happy to be a part of it now.
Yeah, could not agree more. So where are we today, would you say?
Well, okay, so today our main goals, we're building a business. So that means, scaling the game for a broad, engaged player base, and creating an organized play structure. And those are big goals. Danny, what are we doing to make that happen?
Yeah, this one's obviously a work in progress. We're not there. It's very daunting, but I do feel like the groundwork is taking shape every day a little bit more. This is something where, we started Tuesday Night X as a campfire for people to gather every week around the game. And, one of the biggest challenges is just finding players early on to play with each other. And, you have the game out there and it's digital and you think, okay, cool, we've made it accessible. But then people show up and there's no one to play with. Obviously it's not accessible. Mm-hmm. And people want to learn with other people. For the most part, especially tabletop games, they're social experiences. And if you can't provide the social element, you're kind of, if you can't provide the social element, you're kind of missing a big piece of the puzzle there. So, this one we haven't hit yet. We're still working up towards it, but I feel confident we'll get there. We're extremely adaptable. We're not going to get discouraged. We'll encounter setbacks and we'll solve those problems and we'll get there.
Yeah, I want to say, I don't want to toot our own horn too much but this is also one of those things that's I forget who had the idea, but Tuesday Night X, having that as a way of centering all of our players at one time for them to meet up, so that way we can get them to interact with each other and to play the game. I don't know. I think it's been a really good idea. I mean, granted, we are kind of curbing it from Friday Night Magic, but Tuesday Night X has really taken off, and we're starting to do league play with our folks on Tuesday Night X, and we want to open that up. We have one league at 10 players right now. Is that right? 10?
Yep.
And
10 rivals.
10 rivals, yes, with each other, and we'd love to get another league going. And this is where we're going to experiment that draft play that you talked about, Tuesday Night X. We want to get other players to experiment with drafting and give their feedback to us. So if you're out there and listening to this, but you're not participating in Tuesday Night X, please come to the Discord, sign up for that. And you're going to be on the ground floor of making a whole new organized play environment that we're going to have to, we're going to be taking out regionally here in the Texas region, but then exporting all throughout the nation and the world eventually. Having an adventurers guild at your local game store and being able to claim, prize support there amongst all the card players. These are things that we definitely are planning on and we're working towards, and it's all being brewed and cooked up right now at Tuesday Night X on Discord.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that segues really perfectly into one of the things I underestimated here, which is just the sheer amount of new things we'd have to learn, whether it be Tabletopia or Discord, TikTok, Twitch. I mean,
YouTube.
It just seems like there's no YouTube, OBS, what a microphone is. Just there's like no end to like the kind of things that we've had to, learn and expand our horizons about. So I would say that's what I underestimated. Overestimated, I would say, I kind of expected more resistance to people playing online or showing up to an online thing. But it turns out that, as long as you can find a way to make it engaging, people will show up. You have to be reasonable, right? Like, make sure you're not asking for too much. We do from 8 p.m. Central Time to midnight, and it's come as you go. We've got the league, so you can show up, you can play your match. If you end up missing it, we'll work with you to recover it over the week with your rival. And, if you want to hang out and spend a Tuesday night, chilling with some people, it's a good opportunity to disconnect from your everyday life.
Mm-hmm. So I think that, that is that's a great plug for Tuesday Night X, but it's also a great plug or a great fill in as to like where we are, what our mind is on at this time. And if you were to ask us the same question in another 6 months, we could be in a place where Tuesday Night X is practically running itself, and we're looking at the next, how to like I said, export it to LGSs, or there's going to be something else on our plate. I think I had a couple of things I still wanted to touch upon before we moved into the other parts of the show. But one of the things that has crossed my mind multiple times, and so I think this is like one of those truisms that I've now come to appreciate, but I haven't really heard a phrase to sum it up. But there's this situation that I find that by the time the thing that you're working on today, by the time that it comes to fruition and it's just sort of like a foregone conclusion, or you attain it, you will have already moved on to the next thing. So by the time you attain what you're working on today, you're going to be working on something else, and it's almost going to just pass you by. So to take the time, like when they say stop and smell the flowers, that's sort of like what they're talking about. It's like you're going to be, like we're working on Tuesday Night X, and people are then complimenting the game design, and we're like already so past some of the game design elements that we have to remind ourselves, oh yeah, we designed that, the thing that they're coming together to play. There's other examples of this, and like it happens from the most minute detail to the biggest, broadest thing we're working on. Usually by the time that somebody stops and appreciates the work that you did, it's no longer the thing that you are concerned with and that you want to be appreciated for. So you kind of sometimes miss those compliments if you're not careful. And the other thing I wanted to touch on, because this is more of a through line throughout the entire thing. This is something that like started with the beginning of the journey and is still going on today. Is I took it upon myself to be the designer of the game, the templater of the cards, all the aesthetics. and I think, doing a pretty bang up job about it up into a point. So I was almost underestimating my abilities to bring the visual language of the game together, choosing the fonts, setting up the cards, putting the backgrounds on them, all that, until a certain point. And we can go. I don't want to spend too much time. We've already talked for a long time, but there was a point where we were getting together and we were trying to push the card design further, and I realized I lacked the ability to focus on it, the skill set to take it much further than where I had taken it as a designer. And I had to tell you, it's like, Danny, I think we have to find somebody to make this work. To take this away from me and to take it away from us so that they can do better work than either of us could imagine. And that's when we put it out there into the universe that we were basically looking for a designer, and you quickly found a gentleman by the name of LD. I could say his full name, LD Forrest. But wait, Forrest, right? We'll cut this out.
Correct.
Yes. I found that you found LD Forrest.
We'll put it back in.
No. Okay, well, if you're going to put it back in, double it. So LD Forrest came to us. I think you had known of him before this, but it would seem like the perfect opportunity for you to actually like engage with him and start talking with him. And he has become one of our greatest allies in this process. I mean, granted, he's a freelancer. We're paying him, but in a way, he's become a third person that we can like kind of like express these ideas about like the what's going on underneath the hood of the game. Why these aesthetics are important, why we need it. Certain decisions have to be made, and he's showing us a version of the game that I'm honestly I could not have made myself, and that I think that I'm much more confident in, because at the end of the day, I think this is going to be a pretty big deal, and the aesthetics, the iconography that is associated with the game is going to be very important. And it takes a huge weight off my back, which has already kind of been hurting recently, probably due to some of the stresses of the game. It takes that huge weight off my back. It makes me feel confident that what we put out there will have professional polish and not just be like an up jumped amateur's attempt at creating an iconic game.
Yeah, he definitely raises the stakes and makes it feel like, we have to live up to the aesthetics of the game, which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, do you feel like we're at a good place to summarize sort of the takeaways from this main topic, or is there anything else you wanted to add before we close this?
No, the main thing I wanted to add was just to shout out LD and the great work he's been doing, and how he's kind of changed like the goal, our goals, and our what we've been able to focus in on by taking on the design elements of the game. So yeah, I think just go into those key takeaways, and I'm going to get myself prepared for the teaser for next time.
Yeah, like I think I really appreciate LD talking you out of making the game super Mongol centric. Key takeaways: start small. Even relatively limited goals can grow into larger opportunities. Be prepared to be surprised along the way, and remain adaptable. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that things must go the way you imagined. And when you encounter a big goal that is overwhelming, break it down into smaller goals that feel achievable, right? Like keep breaking it down until it feels achievable. Mm-hmm. I know we didn't really talk about that at all during the main topic, and I was supposed to remind myself not to say that if we didn't, but I forgot. So I think it still stands by itself. Mm-hmm. So Will, feel free to leave this one in air. And I'll try to do better about shoehorning in my takeaways into the main topic for the future.
Yeah. I mean, I think a smart person, not a smart person, I shouldn't be so flippant, but I think a person with more experience would say you should write your key takeaways and then build the script backwards from there. Right?
Yeah. I think that's what we'll be doing in the future. Instead of writing the script as we start recording.
Yeah, basically. And thank you, Danny, for getting. Well, we should stop. It should be so much a script as it should just be bullet points and reminders. But yes, I do agree. We need to. That's one reason that I want to quit my day job, because then on Saturday I can write the script, the show notes for our record on Tuesday. instead of
Yeah.
writing, starting it Tuesday morning and then handing it off to you Tuesday afternoon while I do other business about the game. Hey guys, it's not easy making a game, especially if you want to do everything that's involved. So definitely get those calendars out, make a schedule. On our next episode, we have our very first guest, Kervin Kaliza, from 4Y Games, and he's going to share his story about making his very first game, Allow Me to Mansplain. That's a real fun
Very
one.
fun game.
Yeah, very fun.
Yeah.
Especially for dramatic folk like Danny and I. He's going to talk about disrupting the board game industry with new ideas and playing his part to help grow the board game TikTok into a thriving community that it is today. So that's going to be on the very next episode of the Mega Moth Studios Super Secret Podcast. Shh, don't tell anybody about it.
Okay.
Anyways, Danny, so probably our favorite portion of the show. I know your favorite portion of the show. It's Game of the Week time.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is Game Over the Week time. And this part is a two-parter because the first part, so I was in Atlanta visiting my brother this weekend, amongst other things. And on Saturday, we got to go to a great game store in Marietta called Gigabytes Cafe. Highly recommend that you check out Gigabytes if you are in the Atlanta area. It's an enormous store with an enormous amount of board game options, an enormous amount of trading card options, plenty of space to play your favorite games, whether they're card games, board games, or if you need, those tall tables for your miniature things that I'm sure we'll learn more about at some point in the future. But there was a great board game selection. And so, Joel, I bought you a little something while we were there. And I told you I would show it to you on the podcast.
Oh, should I actually be looking at the video feed on my screen back here?
Oh, yeah. Have you not been looking at me this whole time?
No. Like, Danny, I don't know if you know this, but I can't see you whenever we record a podcast.
I thought that was something that we had fixed. Okay, give me a second. I'm going to grab it, and then after we do this, we'll play Game of the Week. How about that?
Okay, yeah, that sounds good to me.
So, Joel, I don't know if we've talked about this in the past on the show. I'm fairly sure we have. We've talked about some of your favorite games of all times.
Yeah,
and as people familiar with the podcast might know, I'm not sure, but might know. Your favorite game of all time is Cards Against Humanity.
God,
so
why do you do this? Why do you spread lies about me? It's one thing to say that I really relate to Genghis Khan and Mongols, but to say that I enjoy Cards Against Humanity is like practically a war crime at this point. Okay, so tell me more about Cards Against Humanity and the game you bought me.
I bought you a Cards Against Humanity expansion.
Not even the base game.
No, I just bought you the expansion.
Well, it's not like you need anything. Okay, what is it?
It is the college pack.
College.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Oh! Okay, that actually might decorate the shelf quite well. Classic Cards Against Humanity college pack. All right. I can dig it.
I'm going to give you this for next week. I doubt it'll ever get opened, but
no, it doesn't need to be. It's only there for the artwork. Beautiful artwork. Thank you, Danny. That actually turned out to be way more thoughtful and less trolly than I thought.
For me, the perfect gift both simultaneously trolls the person receiving the gift, but also tickles their fancy in a way that makes them uncomfortable about being trolled because of how much they enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a delicate balance that I often flub.
If you would indulge me, I could tell a great anecdote that kind of is the perfect troll gift to troll gift kind of situation.
Does it involve leaving my face up behind you for the rest of the podcast as I'm distracted by seeing myself be ridiculous? All right.
Okay. Still down there. You see, it wants to have that little mini face. So, I think we did it wasn't like a Secret Santa, but there was like a Christmas. I used to live with Lucas, your brother, and there was a Christmas that we all decided to do. I forgot exactly how it was laid out, but it was like poetic. And now I feel like I'm going to disservice the story, but basically you were supposed to get everybody like 3 small gifts, but it was like from. Oh wait, no, it was just you were supposed to buy everybody a small gift. Now, I have this habit. I'm a bit of a drinker, or at least I have been in the past, and from time to time, I still indulge. And at the time, I was a bad roommate. I confessed to my roommate's sins. If somebody left beer in the refrigerator, and I was having a few of my own, I would probably delve into their beers as well. So what I remember was I bought Lucas a really nice beer, like a tall boy, a tall bottle of something nice, and I joked and trolled him by putting for Luke from it's like from Joel on the outside of it. Then we opened it up. He found the beer, but on the beer was a note that said for Joel. Like the idea being I was giving it to Lucas, but I would be the one who ended up drinking it. And then he stuck it to me really hard. And I think you took part in this part of it. Is he showed me? He took a video of him opening the beer or presenting the beer to me in the video, and then he opened it up and poured it on the ground.
Yeah. So as context, this was a secret Santa gift thing where we said like there were 3 different categories: something that you'll love, something that you would want to read, and something that you'll hate. And so for the thing that you would hate, you gave Lucas beer for yourself. And for the thing that you would hate, Lucas gave you a video of him pouring your beer.
That's right. That was the context that made it poetic. That was beautiful. And I think whenever I think of like great moments in troll gift giving, it's that combo right there.
Trolling is the gift that keeps giving.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, I'm not a huge troll person, but my best memories are the memories that are clearest in my mind are the ones that involve trolling. So that was the present
Well,
of
there's
the
more where that came from.
That was the present of the week, Danny, and I do plan on making that a segment. Danny's present of the week to Joel. So just keep thinking.
Okay.
Yeah. But what is the game of the week?
I'm definitely going to lean into the gifts that you're going to hate theme then.
Yeah.
Okay, game of the week.
Yes.
This one is not one I came up with. This is one that I saw on TikTok, and when I saw it, I was like, we have to do this on the podcast. It's going to be too much fun.
Okay.
So I think it's called the Alphabet Challenge. Are you familiar, Joel?
No, I am not. You can explain it to me.
Okay. So we're going to take turns, and we're going to have a conversation, and we alternate. Each one says a line, and the only stipulation is that our sentence has to start with the next letter of the alphabet.
Okay.
So I'll start with A and tee you up, and we'll go from there.
I'll see if I can do this. Let me sing the song to myself really quick. Okay, I think I got it.
Any particular reason why you decided to remove your pants before getting on the roller coaster?
Because I was worried that I would soil them.
Could you have thought of another solution?
Don't get me started on the solutions I came up with. They were many, but quite dense and very impractical.
Every time we come to the amusement park, you serve up that same tired excuse and still end up with your pants off on some form of attraction.
Form follows function.
God, that was a reach.
How is it that you always question my decision making? I do this because my pants get in the way. They get very itchy. They get very soiled with all the attractions and excitement that I go through. I think that I found an elegant solution.
In effect, it's because I am tired of bailing you out of jail.
Just because you've had to do it 10 times doesn't mean it's going to happen again.
Kitchen table math would suggest that it will.
Let me be clear. Arrest me 10 times? Shame on me. Arrest me 11th time? Well, there must be something wrong with the system.
Maybe you shouldn't take your pants off so freely in public.
9!
Oddly German.
Please, most of us are German here in America. That was the main, that's the main ancestry line. I think we should all embrace our heritage.
Quit skirting the issue. You love Genghis Khan.
Resetting the conversation, I see. Well, my love for Genghis Khan can only go so deeply as I am quite ignorant to his exploits.
Surely it goes quite deep.
That may be true. I may have a penchant for Mongolian grills and Mongolian, war tactics and, Mongolian lovemaking, but it doesn't mean I'm some sort of conophile.
Undeniably the weirdest way you've tried to justify your interest in Mongolian things.
Very well. I am convinced that saying about Genghis Khan having been so prolific throughout his life that a sizable percentage of the human race can trace their lineage back to him specifically. Well, it's just fascinating, and just the idea that I would have anybody in my family tree to look up to, it's just too much for me. And you know what? I'm not even going to take a DNA test to verify if I could possibly be one of his descendants. I just want to believe.
What do you think's the likelihood that you actually are a direct descendant of Genghis Khan?
Xenophobia would have you believe that somebody of my complexion could never have been descended from a man of the Asian continent. But as we have seen, it only takes a few generations of breeding outside of your distinct race to sort of dilute those features thoroughly. So I think that it's not outside of the question. I mean, I would say just as much as anybody else. I forgot what percentage that was, but it was, anything above 1% is quite a feat of a human. I think it's actually closer to 10. So I just give myself, I'd like take any 10 people off the street, and I just have as much likelihood of being genetically connected to Genghis Khan as any of those other folks.
You really have taken this and given it a lot of thought.
Zero thought, actually.
Well, that was a thing.
I feel like you have the ability to. You're a magician, Danny. You have like the magical words that can shape any conversation into what you want it to be.
Well, I look forward to recutting that conversation.
I feel for Will having to do it. Will, I mean, if you have the time, Will, could you put a little letter tracker so people on screen can keep track of which letter we're up to and anticipate it?
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. Well, just let us know, because
I
I was just glad that I dodged that X. I was impressed that you came out with xenophobia, though.
I was trying to figure it. It was one of those things where I came to the word, and then it was like, how do I actually make this work? That's like most of the thinking that you saw me do, because it's like of course I thought xylophone and X-ray first and foremost, and I was like, that would be a cop out. I have to go a little further.
Yeah, you went further.
Well, folks, if that was
some might say too far.
Yeah, I was going to say, if folks just let me know in the comments. Well, as I like to say, cancel me in the comments.
You do like to say that?
I think it's going to become my new catchphrase.
Well, I'm sure Curvin and I can come up with something next episode.
Please do. I mean, if Curvin got me to say it, would it really be racist?
I'm going to ask Will to bleep that.
A great idea. All right, folks.
Yeah.
Well, Danny, do you have anything else you wanted to say this week before we go into the ending?
No, I'm just super pumped for next week's game of the week, because I've already got some really great ideas, and it's not very often that I get to play a game with you in person, which opens up a whole bunch of extra possibilities.
Yes, folks. That's right. Tune in next week, because not only are we going to have our first guest on, but it's going to be our first in-studio recording where all Danny and myself are going to be in the same room at the same time. So it's going to be a very special episode. And if you want to learn more about it and potentially see some like preview images or maybe behind-the-scenes video, then you should probably follow us on social media. That's TikTok for the videos. Moth Studios is our TikTok account. Don't be surprised if I make an appearance on there here in the next week or so. And then for the photos, Instagram is a great choice. X_seekers_of_fortune on Instagram. And then Facebook, you could probably just get a little bit of both there. That would just be X Seekers of Fortune. And then please come join us for Tuesday Night X and play the beta version of our game. You can find us at Discord. It's just X Seekers of Fortune on Discord. And if you look for X Seekers of Fortune on tabletopia.com, you can find the game and play it there. But if you need to know how to play the game, you might want to check our website, megamothstudios.com, for the quick start guide and some other tidbits and tips and tricks about the rules. We don't have an upcoming event quite on the books yet, though we are looking to schedule something with, Gigabyte Games?
Yeah, I don't know if we're ready to announce that yet.
Okay.
I don't want to put them under any pressure.
Okay. We'll bleep that out, Will. We will probably have an upcoming event here in September and possibly in your neck of the woods, if your neck of the woods is like the East Coast.
We're talking to a number of different game stores right now. It's just a matter of timing, but we have high hopes to be in a number of states before the end of the year.
Yeah. And let's see. I guess one last time, Danny, anything else you wanted to add before we get out of here?
No, I just want to remind everyone to support their local game stores. $1 or $2 spent on a game means nothing to Target, Walmart, or Amazon, but it can mean the world to your local game store. So really make an effort to go out there and spend the money in those walls, particularly if you are somebody who goes there to enjoy the community. These folks are trying to make it every single day. It's not an easy line of work to be in, and anything that you can do to help them keep this this great service available to our community is going to be greatly appreciated. So support your FLGS.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and get us out of here. I have been Joel Watts, reminding you that you must start somewhere, so why not here? Thanks for listening.